I get to the Shabbos, everybody. It's absolutely boiling, boiling, boiling hot, which is nice that it's warm, but it's a bit too warm. I hope everybody else is having a nice weather, as well. We're over to the Mishnah on Tezayin Amud Aleph, 10 lines from the bottom. Mishnah teaches us the basic halacha of Gud Asik and Gud Achis. Gud Asik means a wall which is 10 tvachim. Even if the schach is higher, then it's good enough. So if you make a wall 10 tvachim high, they make the schach much higher, that's Gud Asik. Gud Achis is if the wall is very high and you wanted to touch the floor. Gud Asik, we paskin is kosher. Gud Achis, we paskin is possum. The reason is because the fact that a goat can get in underneath spoils the sukkah. So, just show you the picture of it, a nice picture. Here is a picture of Gud Asik. Right, you've got a mechitza which is not reaching the schach, that is kosher. That one is possible. Now, Rabbi holds it's kosher, but we pass it's possible. The reason is since a goat can get in, it's not considered a mechitza. That's all the Mishnah teaches us. Two straightforward halachas. Let's see the Mishnah inside. Somebody who lowers walls up to down. If it's more than 3 tvachim from the floor, psula. Because since it's more than 3 tvachim from the floor, goats can get in. It says possible. If you said tvachim high, kasher, because then we say Gud Asik mechitza, the mechitza just goes higher and higher. He doesn't agree. Anymore, which is 10 tvachim, even if it's 10 tvachim above the ground, but as long as it is, there's a wall of 10 tvachim, it is kosher. Says, well, what's the machlekes? Masav mechitza tzeluya, a hanging mechitza, materes. Masav mechitza tzeluya, ain't materes, a hanging mechitza is not matter. Then also, we learned to Mishnah even 2 people living. I'm going to show a picture because it's very important to see the picture over here. Here you've got a well. It's between 2 chatzeros. The halach is, even though there's a wall going across it, you're not allowed to take water from either side. Why? Because when you take water from the side which is closest to you, at the end of the day, you're going to, at the same time, you're taking water from the chatzah which is next door you, and you haven't made a neighbor we're talking about. So therefore, you can't take water. If you make a mechitza within the water, even if it doesn't actually touch the water, but since it's within the well of the water, we imagine as if the water is split, and then the water that you're taking is only your water. So this is a hanging mechitza. Now, a hanging mechitza, we just said it down in the Shaz Machlokes between Chachamim and Beis. So the words is like this: Dan Hasan boy a pitch in Shbein Shtei Chatzeros between 2 courtyards. Every man on the Shabbos you come from the Shabbos. Elim can also mechitza sells tvachim ben man ben mato ben nesich oignu. Whether it is within the water, whether it's above the water, whether it's inside the actual pit, that is a good enough mechitza. Top of Tezayin Beis. You have to do it above, within the well. Or that you have to do it below. That means it has to be within the actual well. And not only has to be within the well, the bottom layer of the wall, which is within the well, has to actually touch the water. Rabbi disagrees and he says, no, since if there would be a wall, that's enough to make your own private property private. So also the same thing, since there's a wall, even if it's above the well, and even if it's not going at all within the walls of the well, that is kosher. Which is a the Rabbi Yehuda is given Shittas Beis, just like a Beis that Mishnah holds the mechitza which is hanging, even if it's 1 3 tvachim from the floor, it's okay. So too Rabbi Yehuda holds that the mechitza which is hanging above the well is kosher. So Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosef are saying the same thing. Doma mechitza for the materas. Says well, but lohi, that's not true. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was talking in Hilchas Eruvin. Rabbi Yosef was talking in Hilchas Succca, and you can't compare. And more explains why not. The whole concept of it was with Rabbanon, because the kai from one Rishus to another Rishus Minater is mutter, as long as you don't kai from Rishus Rabbin to Rishus Yochid, and here just 2 private individuals, so it should be mutter. So therefore, but over here we do a Sukkah Devaisa. Look, Rabbi Yehuda would agree it doesn't work. But Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, how can Rabbi Yosef Ochel with Sukkah Devaisa say? Sukkah is only a mitzvah, is a mitzvah say, of a Shabbos is a skila loy. That means each one has its own chumrah. Sukkah is the Raisa, Eruvin is the Rabbanon. But Eruvin is a takana the Rabbanon and Hilchas Shabbos. And Hilchas Shabbos is a skila. So therefore, you cannot compare the two cases to each other. And Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi do not necessarily agree with each other. Rabbi Yossi holds that the hanging mechitza works in Sukkahs. Rabbi Yehuda holds the hanging mechitza works in Eruvin, and there's no way that holds of each other. Says Bob, and if you'll ask Meister Shneisa with Sipori, I'll be nicer. There was a story in Sipori, which is at this stage want to understand that it was just Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Yossi would be the one of our Mishnah. So you see that they hold the same thing in Hilchas Sukkah as Hilchas Shabbos. What was the story? The story was that they couldn't get to Sefer Torah to Shul because there was no Eruv. And what happened was they found that people had left sheets hanging out. And the sheets were reaching almost to the floor, 3 tvachim above the floor. So according to Rabbi Yosef, our Mishnah, hanging mechitza should be okay. According to Chavar Mishnah, should be no good. And nevertheless, they carried the Sefer Torah relying on this mechitza. Now there, it's Hilchas Shabbos. So it's about Sefer Torah on Shabbos. They want to carry it on Shabbos. And after the Gemara says they relied on it. The Gemara is saying that there's no difference between Rabbi Yossi of Sukkah and Rabbi Yossi of Shabbos. Says the Gemara, no, lo Rabbi Yossi. It wasn't through Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. It was Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. You heard like Rabbi Yehuda and Hilchas Eruvin. That's a mechitza which is hanging is good enough for Eruvin for the guy in the world. He held the same thing regarding the carrying of Sefer Torah on Shabbos. On my Meister, what was the story? The Chosser of Dimi Omar Pamachas Shokhav Leviu Sefer Torah of Shabbos. They forgot to bring a Sefer Torah from Friday. The Mocha Pilsus Setidim Agav Amudim. They found sheets on the wall. Explain that in a minute. They found sheets on the pillars. Leviu Sefer Torah Cowboy. They were Pilsus Akadatoch. How can you spread out sheets on Shabbos? You can't bring it into the Chosser to be able to carry it. And the more Elamotzus Dinim Pusa Agav Amudim Leviu Sefer Torah Cowboy. They found the sheets spread and they read from the Sefer Torah. There's a very interesting shaila regarding, is one allowed to do an Issa D'Rabbanon to Mekayim a mitzvah on Shabbos? It's a Machlokes Rishonim. Almost all the Rishonim hold the one's not allowed to do an Issa D'Rabbanon for the sake of Shabbos, for the sake of keeping a mitzvah. The Aruch says the one is allowed to do an Issa D'Rabbanon to Mekayim a mitzvah. And many of them bring this story as a proof back and forth, because here, for the sake of reading Sefer Torah and Tzibur, they forbade an Issa D'Rabbanon, and they only permitted it because they already found the sheets. He says now halachas and how to build the sukkah. You can have a wall which is only 4 tvachim high. How can you do that? Anything less than 3 is lovered. So if you put the wall up to just below 3 tvachim from the ground, no goats can get in, so it's lowered to the ground. And then you put the schach 3 tvachim higher. So then you've got 10 tvachim of only 4 tvachim of wall, and it is kosher. Which is different. What do you do? Anything less than 3 is not. So it is possible to create a sukkah from a post which is only 4 tvachim wide. Here the Gemara says here we have a picture of it. I see a picture. So, right here you've got a picture of the wall is 4 tvachim high. There's less than 3 from the ground to the wall, and less than 3 from the mechitza up to the schach. Says the Gemara, Pshita obviously. End of the day you've got lower to the ground, lower to the schach. We only say 1 lover, not 2. Kamash Malon that we even say 2 lovers. That it says it has to be 7 tvachim on a bit, because 7 tvachim on a bit, you connect it to the ground, just under 3 tvachim from the ground, you've got lovud, so you see you need 7, not 4. We're talking about a very high sukkah. That Beis is giving shittas to Rabbi Yossi. If you've got 7 and a bit and it's touching the schach, it's lower to the schach, even if goats can get underneath, it is kosher. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Abba Pasa Bo Mashu Mat Besukkah Mishum Deifen. Moikim Le Pochus Yesh Tzach Besukkah Deifen, Pochus Yesh Tzach Deifen Kolom Domi. So all you need to do here, we're talking about not height. Here we're talking about length. Here's the picture. you've got a sukkah which is 4 tvachim wide, the wall, and it's less than 3 tvachim from the other wall. So you do lavud, and that creates a sukkah of 7 tvachim. That a sukkah is 7 tvachim. That's the length of a sukkah. So if you've got 4 and a bit, you do lavud till 7, you've got yourself a kosher sukkah. This really tells us the halachas of good asik bechitza and lavud. There's a very famous shit in the Rishonim, and this is something which is everybody should be concerned about. There are many Rishonim that hold that you cannot combine lavud with different akuma. So therefore, if you've got a built-in sukkah, it's a PSD sukkah, so that you're relying on different akuma because there's more than 3 tvachim from the wall. If there would be even a small gap between the sukkah and the schach, so then you're relying on lavud to connect the schach to the wall, plus different akuma, and the two together don't work. If that would be the case, one has to be extremely careful that one's got different akuma, not to rely on other things. So, for example, another nafkamina would be, if a person's got a sukkah where the walls don't reach the schach, and the halacha is that's okay, because we say kudas mechitza, but he puts the walls not directly underneath the schach, but a tiny bit away from them. The halacha is according to many Rishonim that sukkah would be possible. Why? Because either we say kudas mechitza, we say kudas mechitza straight up. But straight up, there's no schach. So therefore, what happens is, if you do rely on kudas mechitza, you have to put the mechitza directly underneath the schach. Let's see a bit more. Now the Mishnah is going to tell us about the halachas of different akum. If there's a 3 tvachim air gap from the schach to the walls, it's possible. That means that whenever there's an air gap of 3 tvachim, so we don't say lavud and we don't connect it. Now, why do we say different akuma? Here we're talking about, I'll show the picture. Unfortunately, I don't make a good picture over here. But the point is that you've got a normal kosher sukkah with a 3 tvachim of air gap between the schach and the walls. The halacha is that sukkah is possible. We don't say different akuma unless it's actually a wall. Air can't be a different akuma. Now the Mishnah gives us 3 examples of different akuma, one after the next. I just show the pictures very briefly, and then we will see what's the words for it. We will see the Mishnah inside. Yeah, just show the pictures first. Here's a sukkah which is 3 tvachim away from the wall. Air. We don't say different akuma because air doesn't say different akuma. This sukkah is possible. This sukkah is a house where the middle fell in, so therefore you've got different akuma to the schach. This is the normal, typical built-in sukkah. Here we've got a case of a courtyard which everybody owns a balcony, so we put schach across a balcony and it is kosher. And finally, here we talk about a sukkah gedola, a huge sukkah, and you put on it some posel schach, and in the middle you put kosher schach. Those are the 3 examples the Mishnah gives us of different akuma. And I'm always going to try and clarify why we need 3 examples of one halacha. That's the Mishnah inside. Second line, Beis shenifchas, a house that fell in the Succca al we put schach on top of it. If there's more than 4 amas, psula. Chotz, which is surrounded by balconies, or sukkah gedola or massive sukkah, which you put schach, which is possible. In yeshtachtov arba amos, if there's 4 amos from the schach sukkah to the schach, psula, it is possible because different akuma only goes up to 4 amos and no more. Normally, why do we have to have 3 examples of different akuma? When a house falls in, the walls of the house were originally made for the roof. So therefore, it's nice, it's easy to understand that the walls from the side bend in different akuma to the schach. But if you've got a courtyard full of balconies, where the walls of the courtyard were not made for the inner premises, they were made just to support the houses. This is the outside of a normal house. So you might have thought that it's not considered different akuma. You need that case. The real, in olden days, ceilings were made out of wooden boards. Wooden board is really schach kosher. The only problem is you put it in for the wrong reason. You didn't put it in for sukkah, you put it in for the house. But in a case where now you have to rely on different akuma, maybe you can rely on it. You use something which is possible. The Succca possible. Mishnah tells us 3 cases of the a house where the walls were made for the inside, so we should say the even a chotza where the walls were not made for the inside, nevertheless we say the and finally, even in a case where you use schach possible, not just when you use balls, which are intrinsically schach kosher, but you put it for the wrong reason. But even when you use schach possible, it is all kosher. This is a halacha and a ma'isa, and it's a very important halacha. If you have 3 tvachim running across the entire sukkah of air, or 4 tvachim running across the entire sukkah of schach possible, then the sukkah is possible. The sukkah is possible. That's what Rav said. Rabbi will argue against this for quite some time, but the ma'isa we pass can like Rav. So let's say, for example, a person puts up fluorescence across his entire middle of the sukkah, and the fluorescence are more than 4 tvachim wide, let's say lights, he in fact can actually end up with a possible sukkah. What's happened? Somebody came to me. He had not got a BSD sukkah, he got a different kind of sukkah. And he had a beam going through the middle, and the beam was more than 4 tvachim wide, and his sukkah was actually a built-in sukkah which was possible. Now, Rabbi tries to argue with this. And he says, we'll do the shakal v'tayah, let's do it. But we know, I said to him, I know the person with shloshim menolachu. How do you know that air passes? Because our Mishnah just said that there's a 3 tvachim gap from the wall to the schach possible. Schach possible, that lives in the Bahamas. So if that same Mishnah tells us that possible is only possible with 4 amos, not 4 tvachim. Only if there's 4 amos, and you're talking about the situation where there's only 4 tvachim. You're wrong. That's a different circumstances. Our Mishnah is talking about where it's connected to the walls. So around the walls, you can have up to 4 amos of psul. But going through the middle, it's only up to 4 tvachim. And I said to him like this. Now Rabbi tries to argue from a piece of logic, a complicated piece of logic. He says like this. If you've got posel schach which is less than 4, that's okay, because we said less than 4 down the middle is okay. And next to that schach posel, you also have an air gap, but it's less than 3. Obviously, ksher would be kosher. Why would it be kosher? Because neither one of them is an issue. It's less than 4 tvachim schach posel. Less than 3 tvachim of air, so it should be kosher. Now, if you fill up part of the air with schach posel, with spits, my psula now, according to you, become posel. Why will it become posel? Because you hold that anything which is 4 tvachim with schach posel down the middle is posel. That doesn't make any sense. Air, we know, is more chamor than psul, because air, it passes around the side by 3 tvachim. And therefore that kumah goes up to 4 amos. So air is more chamor than schach posel. So I say to you, air is not as bad as schach posel, and yet you're saying that if you've got less than 3 tvachim of air, plus less than 4 tvachim of schach posel, it's kosher. But if you add a little bit of air schach posel to the 4 tvachim, to the less than 4 tvachim schach posel, it becomes posel. And that doesn't make any sense. According to your logic as well, exactly according to you. What did Rabbi hold? Rabbi held that schach posel only passes if it's 4 amos back in the middle. If you've got less than 4 amos, schach posel. And you've got next to it air, which is less than 3. What would you say? You would agree that it's kosher because you hold less than 4 amos, it's kosher. But if you fill it up with metal spits, that's not logical, because you yourself say that an airspace of 3 tvachim is more chamor than a schach posel of 4 amos. And yet, if you add a little bit of air to the schach posel, it is okay. If you add schach posel to the schach posel, it's possible. How can you compare? Top of Yisrael with Beis, Shiur will have Shiur. At the end of the day, it's 2 separate concepts. The 4 amos is a dinner day for that kumah. Mashenkin 3 tvachim is nothing to do with different kumah. It's got to do with the fact that airspace makes a psul. That's why they don't join. Shiur mishum afloga, because of the afloga, because of the separation. Malis pali b'schach posel, malis schach b'schach posel. What difference does it make if the schach posel of 4 tefachim or schach posel with eh? In a small sukkah which is only 7 tefachim, you would agree that there would be a problem because both of them would pass. Either 3 tefachim of air would pass because now you've got less than 4 tefachim, or 3 tefachim of schach posel, so they're all the same. It's not because the shiur was similar, and if the later the shiur the sukkah, it's not got the shiur of a sukkah. So therefore, you can't compare. That means Rava the Ma'aser doesn't retract. Rava holds that schach posel only passes in the middle of a sukkah if it's 4 amas, but Rav holds even 4 tefachim. If things are not similar, you can't join them. But it's not. The halacha is for a piece of clothing to become tamei, it has to be valuable. Depending on the material, is how big the piece of clothing has to be as to whether it spreads tumah. So I beg it if it's cloth shleisha, because 3 by 3 tefachim is already worth something. Hasak, if it's sackcloth, which is worth less, it has to be 4 by 4. Ha'oi, skin, which is even less valuable, has to be 5 by 5. Mapot, a mat, shisha. But on the Allah, we learned about this particular case. If you've got all 4, any 2 of these things, if you join them 2 together, you can become tummy, even though the shiur are not the same. So we see when things are different shiurim, nevertheless they can join. There's a different svar. They can each one becomes tummy with 1 tefach if it's used to sit on. Person cuts out and patches up with 1 tefach of any of these, sackcloth, leather, cloth, or any of these things. Tomei. What's it used for? There's a special tumah called tumas moishov. That's if a zob sits on something, it becomes tumas moishov. So if the case where he's riding on the saddle of a donkey, and he used a tefach by a tefach of any of these materials, that tefach by a tefach will be tomei because of tumas moishov. Since they're all equal in that one respect, so therefore it is considered a tomei. Says the Gemara. They had a slightly different version of that previous statement which we had, that 4 tefachim passes. What is the different version? In the middle it passes only with 4 amas. So it passes with 4 tefachim. And that side, from the side it passes with 4 amas. Either way it's 4 amas. Now, this version says exactly the same thing, but in the name of Shmuel, not Rav. Last time we said the name of Rav. And furthermore, it says that Rav actually disagrees. So now, if you put a beam board 4 tefachim wide, it is kosher. That's why it's kosher, because at the end of the day, he holds that up to 4 amas. So therefore, if it's 4 tefachim wide, you don't mind. Why is it kosher? You've got a beam of 4 tefachim. When that side, we're talking about where you put it to the side. And that's why it's kosher, because everybody agrees that with that side, it's okay. 2 sheets join, 2 beams don't. But when there's some kistinim that they both join. So both says, when that side, we're talking about where you put it around the sukkah. Around the sukkah it becomes possible by 4 amas. So therefore, we're talking about where you join the 2 together, and therefore become 4 amas. And if we're talking about the middle, what's the case? If it's 4 tefachim, normally it's the rufei. The minute that it's 4 tefachim, it's possible straight away because it's a 4 tefachim gap. If there's no 4 tefachim, they're kosher schach, and therefore they should be okay. How can they join up? Says this my mitzvah and abamas minatzad, they join the 4 amas minatzad, and that's what we're discussing when we say that the mitzvah. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We should have a very good Shabbos, and look forward to seeing you again. And any questions, feel free to ask. You can also email me if you want to get into my email. You can ask.